Good morning. I would like to welcome all participants and attendees to the second day of the SME Resilience event and to this product and process certification session. My name is Aniko Balogh and I will be your moderator during these sessions. Some of you already participated yesterday, but for those who are joining us today, I would just like to tell you some words about ourselves. I represent the organizer project, which is called Co-Versatile. We are a Horizon 2020 project supported by the European Commission. The project started 2 years ago, just after the breakout of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our main aim is to support the adaptation capacity, the resilience, and the flexibility of the European manufacturing sector. Our lives and work are still affected by the coronavirus pandemic. The COVID-19 has been and still is a challenge for the European economy and its citizens. During this health crisis, it's vital that we not only protect the critical sectors of our economy, but we need to protect jobs and employees too. The economic impact of this crisis also includes the possibility to adapt to these disruptions. So during these upcoming 2 days, you will learn more about the Co-Versatile's insights and results in delivering a rapid response to such emergency situations and the challenges which I described above. So today our morning session is dedicated to the issue of product certification. Let me tell you some words about our agenda. So first, after my introduction, we will get an overview of the state of the art and about the rapid development of personal protective equipment. The next topic will be identifying certification needs and adapting product and process certification in times of crisis. And finally, as a best practice, we will hear about the certification of a respiratory device under time pressure during the COVID pandemic. So let's just jump into deep water and let's just meet our first speaker, Dr. Matthias Wangenheim. I would like to tell you some words about Matthias. Since 2013, Matthias Wangenheim is the assistant director at the Institute of Dynamics and Vibrations Research at the Leibniz University of Hannover, Germany. He is leading a research group in the field of friction and tribology. Matthias is involved in several international Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe research and development projects, as well as in numerous bilateral product-oriented industrial collaborations. Before his academic career, he was working for companies in the aerospace industry as systems and innovation manager and advanced product engineer. Matthias Wangenheim holds the PhD degree in mechanical engineering. His thesis addressed friction and wear prediction of pneumatic industrial seals. So today he will give us an overview of the state of the art of our topic today. So Matthias, I hand over the presentation to you. Thank you. It seems that Matthias is having some connectivity problems. It's just me, or Matthias, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Am I on the stage?
Yes, you are on the stage, so please get started with your presentation.
Oh, sorry. Then I misunderstood the news here. Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you for the introduction, Aniko. I will take our product, a reusable face mask, as a case study to understand when in the different phases from product idea, product development, prototyping, we come into contact with certification issues. So the scenario is, in the beginning of the COVID pandemic, we decided to develop and launch a new face mask. To be able to bring a face mask in the market, we need to design a product with superior properties, because there are already face masks in the market. As you know, these non-woven FFP2 masks, for example, they work pretty well. So if we want to have a product, it has to be better. Next thing we had to keep in our mind is that in case of a pandemic, we have a very high demand for this product. So we need to be able to scale up our production very easily. And to be able to do that, we will probably need to reconfigure existing manufacturing lines to produce face masks as well. Not only in our factory, but we also want to enable other factories, rubber manufacturing factories in particular, to produce our face masks. And again, the main emphasis today in my talk will be the identification of steps where we need to, where a certification is required. So let's put our certification glasses on. If you want to design and produce a new product, we need a team. And we, in such a European collaborative project, we are intersectorial, interdisciplinary, international, which gives us some advantages. The core team in our mask production are 3 SMEs. First is ORP Stampi, based in Italy. They are a mold maker. Next is SKM Aeronautics. They are producing rubber parts. They are situated in Israel. And so they use the molds produced by ORP to manufacture parts. And number 3 is ML Engraving. They are again situated in the north of Italy. They engrave the molds with nice surfaces so that you get a nice touch and feel of a rubber product. We will see later why this is important or has advantages in a mask production. These 3 SMEs got support in terms of research and development. ITA Innova, based in Spain, a research agency in Spain, they supported with process simulation, and myself at Leibniz University in Hannover, we supported with rapid prototyping of the first product ideas. And on a meta level, we got support from a broader team in terms of business consultancy. Starting from the right, we did some activities on risk analysis and risk awareness together with IE Business School in Spain. We had support concerning supply chain analysis from Fraunhofer IML. This is not the topic of today. We will discuss that and present that tomorrow. We need support in terms of training if we want to enable other manufacturers to produce our mask. This was done by Edge SSMI. And finally, all certification issues. There we got consultancy from SUPSI, who will talk after my presentation directly. Now, if you ask customers or potential customers on a mask design, you will get different answers. Here's a cloud of answers, word cloud. First of all, we need high wearing comfort. Of course, and this comes together with what we call a velvety texture. If we talk about a rubber mask, then you have to wear rubber on your face all the day. And you don't want to feel rubber. You want to feel velvet. You want to feel cloth or even some non-woven style feeling you want to have on your face. Then it would be a big advantage if it is reusable. Reusable means we reduce the waste, but on the other hand, we need to have exchangeable filters, and the mask has to be washable. And some more customers, they answered, it would be good if it's transparent. This is another advantage compared to everyday paper masks you have. And of course, important is the ease of breathing, and you don't want to have fog on your glasses, which often happens with common non-woven masks. Based on that, we first chose a material. We went for a silicon elastomer, HCR. This is not a liquid silicon, but a solid silicon. It has some advantages. It is available in medical grade. It is relatively easy to process in comparison to liquid silicons, and it is non-toxic. Here we have the first contact with certification. If it has a medical grade, then it needs to be certified. And that for sure, if you sell this product, also the material is medical grade. Next step in our design was the selection of filters. We decided between cloth filters and non-woven filters, both in quality of N95 or FFP2. Here again, we need a certification of the supplier on this product, because if we want to sell a FFP2 quality mask, we have to be assured that the filter is certified towards this FFP2 requirements. In the next production step, we did some rapid prototyping. Here in my university, we used a 3D printer, the resin printers, for producing the full rubber mask, as you can see on the left, the top left. And we even included already the first surface microtextures on the sealing lip, which is in contact with your face, to see how it feels if you wear it for a longer time. The final texture will not be applied directly on the product, but on the mold. So you only have to apply it once. It will be transferred to the product during the molding process. This is done by the company ML Engraving, which I introduced earlier. They are able to texture free-form surfaces with a nanosecond and picosecond laser technology, and they are able to create such a velvet texture on parts in contact with skin. Again, it is the sealing lip and the laces which are in contact with the ears. If you look on the bottom, there we have an example or a trial for these velvet textures. They really look and feel like velvet, but there we again come into contact with certification questions. If we are able to clean this very rough surface, for example, in a dishwasher or whatever you want to use to clean your mask finally. Now the material and the texture were defined. Now the last step is the geometric design of our mask. We would like to have adjustable straps to control the wearing comfort, but on the other hand, it has to properly filter and seal the surface. Another important point is that it has to be fail-safe in use. So if you use it, then for sure you have to attach the filter in a correct way. There should be no chance to attach it in a incorrect way, in the wrong way. This has to be certified. This is an important part of the product certification. The mask design is ready. Now we need to design the mold. This was the co-design of ORP, the mold maker, and SKM, the molder. Our boundary condition were that it has to fit the most common 500 by 500 presses, so it's easy to copy our process to many rubber manufacturers. We textured only the insert. The insert helps us for easily demold the part, so there's no manual extra work or extra effort needed. We optimize the injection inlets for a very short process time, so we can produce a large amount of mask in a short time. And another very important point is that it is possible to use as many solid rubber types as possible. And in case of a shortage of supply, for example, during a pandemic of our medical grade rubber, you might need to use other rubbers, for example, food grade, which are a little bit lower in quality, but probably it's more important to save your breathing than these toxicity questions in an early part of the pandemic. Now we have to finally mold and manufacture our part. There are different steps to follow. We have to handle the material from the raw material, incoming goods, QA inspection, the QA procedures throughout the factory, before molding, during molding, and after molding. The molding process itself, and very important, is a post-curing step after the molding, because these medical grade rubbers, there you have to be sure that there won't be any off-gassing fumes at the end. You need a full cross-linking. So these procedures have to be certified. The same as with the product traceability or production traceability. So here we are talking on certifying the process before we talked about certifying the product. We had support during all these activities from IE Business School in terms of risk analysis, for example, the certification risks, supply chain analysis and training I already introduced briefly, and very important input we got from SUPSI on the medical devices certification, on the filter classes, on the production quality certification. And the following presentation will be held by SUPSI on exactly these topics on a broader meta level. I'm done. This is my introduction from the viewpoint of SMEs who want to bring into the market or design and bring into the market a new medical product. Thank you for your interest.
Thank you, Matthias, for your presentation. Now we have got time for some questions, so I would just like to ask a question which came here in. Did you hear my question, Matthias?
No, sorry, you were frozen.
Oh, sorry. So the question was that you explained that 3 SMEs were involved in the mass development. Do they all need certification?
That's a good question. Thank you. In this special case, we have to divide between the process certification of the production process. This is mainly necessary for the rubber manufacturer, in our case for SKM, because they are dealing with the final product and the raw materials, and they need to process these. The other case is the product. If we want to bring the product in the market, the one who brings the product into the market is responsible for the product certification. So if it's only one of these companies, then it is the owner of the product. But if it's a shared ownership, all 3 of them are responsible for the certification of the product.
Okay, Thank you very much for this answer. I think it just made it clearer for our participants. Anyway, I would just like to ask everybody, so the participants, that we will have the opportunity to meet our presenters during the expo after between the two sessions in the lunch break, and you will also have the opportunity to contact us through later on. So all of these questions can be discussed in more details, but I will talk about it later on tomorrow at the end of all the sessions. Okay, so I would just like to thank you for Matthias for his starting up presentation. And I would like to ask the next presenters for the stage, Dr. Marzio Sorlini and Riccardo Canavesi. Their presentation will be about identifying certification needs and adapting product and process certification in times of crisis. So we will just continue the topic from a different point of view. So let me just introduce you the presenters. Dr. Marzio Sorlini is a senior lecturer and researcher at SUPSI. He graduated in management engineering at the Politecnico di Milano with a major in strategy and innovation management. He holds a PhD in industrial engineering, and he is currently a senior lecturer and researcher at SUPSI, where he works in research and innovation projects and innovative business model development, sustainability-driven innovation, product and process life cycle assessment, and advanced environmental accounting in manufacturing context. His colleague is engineer Riccardo Canavesi, who is the research assistant at SUPSI. Riccardo holds a Bachelor of Science in Industrial Engineering and a Master of Science in Engineering with specialization in Business Engineering from the Swiss University of Applied Sciences. He is currently working as a research assistant at SUPSI, where he is involved in research activities within some European projects on change management and new business model development in the manufacturing sector. So please, Marzio and Riccardo, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It's Matthias Sorlini speaking. We will give this presentation together with my colleague Riccardo Canavesi, as mentioned by Dr. Aniko Balogh. The presentation, we are both from SUPSI, we are researchers, but we carried out several activities both within research projects and together with manufacturing companies. So what we are going to describe with our presentation today is something that is the result of a collaboration that we have both within Coversatile, so in a research context, but also in applications together with other manufacturing companies, both from Switzerland and from other European countries. The topic of our presentation is certification, and more specifically, we want to explore which are the challenges that manufacturing companies have to face concerning certification, and more specifically product and also process certification, as Dr. Wangenheim already mentioned before, when they have to face a crisis such as a pandemic. So as you can imagine, our exploration started with investigating the dynamics of COVID-19, and our presentation today provides you some evidence from the market concerning the COVID-19 outbreak. So we will give some numbers concerning personal protective equipment and medical device, and their shortage in the immediate aftermath of the COVID-19 and the coronavirus pandemics. And based on this data, we will be able to quantify the difference between the demand and the supply of the market concerning these these products. Why is it relevant for us? Because the crisis, in times of crisis, the difference between the supply and demand is quite common, and it is a starting point for the second point that we are going to describe. So the need for repurposing. We have manufacturing companies, usually supported by public authorities, that work in order to adapt, modify, extend their production facilities in order to be able to produce the devices, the products that are needed for the given crisis, so for the given pandemics. Okay, based on the experience from COVID-19, we will share with you some lessons learned and some evidence with a special focus on certification, so on certification needs of the company. Once we have made some evidence concerning the needs of the companies, we will try to give you some recommendations and suggestions concerning how to face such certification needs, either during a pandemic or either during a crisis, or as a response or previously in preparation of a future crisis. So in the last 2 points of our presentation, we will try to share with you a decision support tool that we experimented during our research activities and together with some manufacturing companies in order to be prepared to the next to the challenges of the next crisis. Okay, let's start with some data concerning the pandemics. Unfortunately, these data are quite well acknowledged by several of you. Okay, so on the left side you see the chart about the COVID-19 outbreak, the number of cases of coronavirus, and on the right side we have a chart that is partially based on reported data and partially based on forecasting. As you can see, we have 3 different products mapped on the right chart: respirators, surgical masks, and cloth face masks. And as you can see, in 2020, the number of these products that have been required by the market, okay, so from a demand point of view, it's more than 20 times the usual volumes required by the market. For these products, but also for several other products usually involved in the treatment or in the prevention of the coronavirus, of pandemics, or other challenges, okay, you have a really boost in the volumes and the requirements from the demand side. And it is quite common when you have crisis. Okay, the same, okay, the data before were focused on Europe. The same happened in the US, but the same happened almost in all the countries, okay? And here in this chart, you can see the difference between the demand and the supply. So here we are focusing in the immediate aftermath, so few weeks after the COVID-19 outbreak. And as you can see, we have 290 million of face masks required by the market and only 80 million of face masks available, produced. Okay, why do we see such a shortage? Such a shortage, such a difference is also the result of the supply chains, of the modern supply chains. As you can see in this chart, several of these devices, either medical devices or personal protective equipment, are manufactured outside Europe, okay, given that we are focusing on Europe. And for example, for face shields, almost 50% is produced in China. And the same happens for other protective garments, for gloves, for face masks. But also, if you look at medical devices such as respirators and other tools, they are or either entirely or partially produced outside Europe. And during the pandemics, several countries, here is article from Reuters, as you can see, several countries, 80 countries here is mentioned, introduced some temporary restrictions and bans, export bans, in order to preserve the internal production of such critical or really urgent equipment products, and to keep them internally and not to sell outside. So this makes such countries, some countries such as the European ones, really in a hard shortage for these products. As you can see here, for example, some other data concerning the China production of face masks and respirators, the commercialization of those. Okay, as you can see, starting from February 2020, they drastically reduced the exports, and they increased the import volumes. This means that for European countries, but also for the US, there's a strong shortage in the supply side of the market. This, from a microeconomics point of view, results in such a situation. The blue lines, the blue lines refer to the demand, and the red lines to the supply. The dotted lines refer to the scenario after the COVID-19 outbreak. As you can see, we have the curve, the supply curve, that moves left, while the demand curve moves right. We started with an equilibrium in 2019, and now we don't have an equilibrium in the aftermath of the COVID pandemic. Why do we don't have an equilibrium? Because the difference between the supply and the demand is such high that the price of equilibrium would have been really not feasible for the market, not practicable for the market. And what happens? The goal of public institutions, but also of companies from countries where the shortage was higher, was to move the supply, meaning the volumes, the produced volume, right, in order to reach a new equilibrium, to find a new equilibrium with the demand side, with reasonable prices, maybe higher than those before the pandemics, but okay, reasonable, and with relevant quantities, able to face the urgency and the requirements from the market. And how to face this? We had several public entities acting, governments acting in order to promote the production of such scarce devices. Published several governments, we have also from European Commission and from the US, they published on their own websites or institutional website list of important supplies, usually referring to medical devices or personal protective equipment. Here you have the list of the most important devices that had to be produced, such as surgical and medical face masks, ventilators, protective clothing, personal eye protection, but also respiratory protective devices. All these items were published as really important and really urgent in production, both in order to prevent or to treat and to treat the consequences of the pandemics. And which is the answer that manufacturing companies can give? They can scale up the production if they are already active in a given market, or they can try to convert the manufacturing capacity to such new products. So they start from a market production, from a kind of product that is quite different from those listed here, and they adapt the production in order to be able to produce the required devices. These are the two main applications that we saw, and this is called usually repurposing. Repurposing means usually changing the production in order to adapt existing production to the new product or process, but it can also mean to extend existing production in order to increase the volume, the produced volume that you can propose, that you can sell to the market. And the question that we can ask to ourselves is, what happened to those manufacturing companies engaged in revising their production, in repurposing their production? Did they succeed? We have some documents, early documents, since the pandemic is quite young. And so we have some documents, case studies, some articles in literature, some experiences from experts in the sector that gives us some data. We analyzed more specifically 100 firms that have been taking, that undertake the repurposing process, the repurposing journey, and we analyzed them in terms of standard production, so pre-pandemic production, which was their starting point, repurpose production, so which is the COVID-19 related product that they developed to answer the calls from the government, for example, and some data concerning the failure or success of their repurposing initiative. Based on that, we analyzed some results related with these 100 companies, and what we saw is that key drivers for a positive, for succeeding in the repurposing were listed here, are the ones listed here. So first, the holding of relevant and applicable process certification. So those companies able to that already had in place a process certification that is relevant and aligned with the new product, they had a higher probability to succeed in their transformation. Second, similarity between the original and the repurposed products in terms of raw materials and components. So if the material is the same, if the components that you use with the new product are really similar to the ones that you used before the pandemics, then you have a higher probability to succeed in your repurposing process. Holding the right technology and machinery, but also have well-trained workforce and relevant skills. Also having already operating in the repurposed manufacturing industry. In some other cases, for example, we have some examples from the automotive sector. Those companies are far away from the new context required by the repurposing by the governments, for example, but they can provide some transsectorial skills, such as core competencies related with, for example, supply chain management, access to raw materials or components, and so on. So it is not mandatory to have all these points in place, but at least one or two of them are useful if you want to succeed in your repurposing project. Otherwise, it is better that you focus on your core competencies and try to give your contribution on a single established supply chain. Out of 100 companies, almost 75 failed in their manufacturing conversion. How can we measure the failure? The failure happens when the product that they produced was not consistent with the applicable required certification, or was not consistent with the market requirements. So they started to produce a new product, they probably sometimes reached the new product, so were able to produce such a new product, but they failed in complying with the regulations in force. And why did they fail? Usually the main reason of the failure, so almost 50% of the cases, one of the main reasons of the failure was suitable certifications, availability of suitable certification. And certification is a time-consuming process. So if you have a new product and you want to certify such a new product, it usually takes from 1 year to 2 years. It depends on the complexity of the product. So if you want to provide a quick response, if you don't have a previous certification that is quite consistent with the new one, then it is hard to reach the goal, okay, to to provide a concrete answer. And second, you need skills. So if you start for example, from a textile product and you want to reach a medical device, a face mask, for example, that is a medical device or a personal protective equipment device, then the difference in terms of needed skills is really high. So this is another reason why you can fail in obtaining the certification that you need. And usually, on the other side, companies that succeeded already owned a consistent certification, for example, only focusing on process certification or on management system certifications, such as those mentioned there. And this is a really good starting point if you want to succeed in your repurposing process. Based on this evidence, in our activities within SUPSI, we tried to develop some decision support tools and to set up consulting services supporting companies in either adapting to their certification to the requirements of the post-pandemic situation or post-crisis situation, or preparing in a preventive approach to the new, to the future pandemics or crisis, okay, adopting the most suitable certification in advance. I leave the floor to my colleague Riccardo Canavesi for showing you those tools and those processes.
Okay, thank you, Marzio, and thank you, Aniko, for the initial presentation. So, Marzio explained a little bit our role in terms of certification. So basically, SUPSI, we are able to provide 3 different services that can be applied in 3 different situations. So just to quick recap what Marzio said before, we are able to provide a service that we call Quick Decision Support Tool for certification gaps that can be applied to drive initial go, no-go decision, and also to identify the best fitting certification when a crisis, for example, pandemic, is already ongoing. The second service that we can provide is the consultancy toward preventive certification. So if a company wants to start working now in non-crisis situation to be ready for the next pandemics. And finally, we are also able, in case of ongoing crisis, to support companies in finding the right consult and the right labs to achieve the certification that they want to achieve. Okay, so SUPSI in the last few months has worked in developing a framework, a decision support tool, that basically aims at supporting companies, especially in manufacturing, to evaluating the role that they might play during the crisis. For example, if they want to repurpose the manufacturing or the manufacturing capabilities in producing a shortage medical goods, for example. The decision support tool developed by SUPSI has basically two scope. So in ongoing crisis, is able to provide support in speeding up the repurposing process, or in case of non-crisis period, to identifying and analyzing and pointing out what are the most suitable certification for a company to be ready for the next future crisis, for example, pandemic. So let's now see a little bit more in depth how the tool is structured. So the tool focuses on 3 main steps. The first one is the analysis of the requirements for the goods that were in shortage, for example, medical staff or medical goods, in terms of manufacturing and certification. The second step is the analysis, so the company assessment that want to repurpose the manufacturing following the same criteria applied in the previous step. And the third step is the gap analysis gap analysis that is meant to pointing out the differences and the similarities between the company's capabilities and the requirements in manufacturing certification for the critical goods. So let's now see a little bit in detail the three main steps. So the first one is the product analysis. So this step is meant to analyze the products in terms of raw materials, manufacturing technologies that are needed to manufacture the product, and the product, a process certification that are required to sell and commercialize the product in a specific market. The second step, we can just, this is an example of, we applied this framework for medical goods that were in shortage at the beginning of COVID-19 pandemics. So more or less from February to March 2020. So we analyzed the medical goods that were basically medical devices or personal protective equipment, such as gloves or respirators and so on, under the criteria that I explained before. So the materials needed to manufacture the product, the manufacturing technologies needed to manufacture the product as well, and the certification that are required to sell and commercialize the product, in this case, for the European market. So the product certification, the process certification, and also if is required a notified body, so external party that certify that ensure that your product is compliant with the existing regulation. The second step is the company assessment. So we analyze the framework, say, to analyze the company that want to, for example, repurpose the manufacturing, its manufacturing under basically the same criteria. So the material that the company usually treats, the manufacturing technologies, and also the process certification, in case there are already all the insight. For example, we taken for in our analysis the Strauss Corporation case studies. That is an American company that is acting and work in the plastic and chemicals industries, providing additive solution that at the beginning of pandemics, decides to help the US governments in providing medical goods. The third step is the gap analysis. So our framework is able to detect and identify the similarities, so map in color in green, and the differences color in red, so that we are able to identify which product the manufacturing companies, for example, what the Strauss Corporation that we have taken into account is, let's say, is able to convert the manufacturing to. So the gap analysis pointed out that this company should focus on repurpose the manufacturing, providing surgical masks, respirators, and are basically face mask, but following the personal protective equipment directive, and surgical gowns or caps. This because they have similarities in materials, manufacturing technologies, and the companies already held the certification, the process certification, not the product, of course, but the process certification required to sell the product, commercialize the product. The tool, how did we validate the tool? We just see after 2 years of from the beginning of the pandemics, what actually happened. So the companies in this case succeeding in repurposing, providing surgical masks and respirators. We did the validation with several companies, both for successful cases and both for failure cases. Moreover, the decision support tool provides also additional information also for company that doesn't want to repurpose the manufacturing capacity. So in case this company, taking into account the Strauss Corporation, doesn't want to repurpose the manufacturing, can focus on the similarities that the framework pointed out. And so maybe the company can act as a supplier of raw materials, in this case plastics, for other manufacturers that, of course, just in time of crisis, want to scale up the production and respond to the, let's say, call from the government to scale up the production. Okay. So finally, SUPSI is also able to identify and support companies. Support companies is in identifying the most suitable certification for a specific product. So in Coversatile, we work with other partners that want to certify and develop a specific face mask. So together we work and we analyze and we decide together which is the most suitable certification that the company should follow and achieve. And we also provide support in identifying the critical steps. So here we just map the most, let's say, critical steps for the respirators, so face mask that following the personal protective equipment directive. And we can identifying, for example, different paths to achieve the same certification and find out which is the best and the most suitable for the partners that is involved in this process. So I went up. Thank you for your interest. And if you have questions, we are both here.
Thank you very much, Riccardo and Marzio. We don't have any questions yet, but I'm suggesting to go on with the next presentation because you are exactly on time. So thank you very much for keeping the planned time slot for your presentation. So let's just go on with our next presenter, who is Iris von Uitert. And she will also give an overview in a similar topic. So Iris von Uitert has a PhD degree in electrical engineering. Since 2011, she has worked as a quality and regulatory affairs engineer at Demcon and has been involved in the development and the certification of medical devices, both for customers as well and for Demcon's own products. So, Iris, please go on with your presentation. And as the final presenter, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Aniko, for your introduction. And good morning, everybody. Following the previous presentation from SUPSI regarding their framework for certification support, I'm going to share with you our practical experience with the certification of a medical ventilator during the recent COVID pandemic. Some of you might already know Demcon, but for those of you who don't, I'll briefly start by explaining our company. Demcon is a medical engineering, a mechatronical engineering company founded in 1993 by two engineers. Within Demcon, we develop and manufacture high-quality, innovative, complex systems and products, and we aim to solve challenging and technological and social problems. We have currently 11 locations in 4 countries, and there are 16 different companies within the Demcon holding. One of which is Maccabi, who develops innovative respiratory technology. This slide shows a few examples of the medical products we develop within Demcon, from non-invasive blood pressure monitoring equipment to eye surgery units. But today I'm going to talk about the medical ventilator we developed for Maccabi during the COVID pandemic. For this development, we managed to go from an early idea to production within 8 weeks, and I'll show this in more detail in the next slide. As you can see, we brought together a team of 50 engineers within 3 days after the initial idea of wanting to produce a medical ventilator. Within a week of this team startup, we already had the first prototype available. Within 3 weeks, we were able to do the first clinical testing on patients. And after 6 weeks, our CE exemption was approved. We then decided to continue with the CE certification just to ensure that everything was officially in order and so that we would be able to sell also outside of the Netherlands. And we arranged this within 8 weeks, for less than 200 days. If you want to bring a medical device onto the market, you need to comply to the applicable legislations. At the time of the development of the Demcon, this was still the Medical Device Directive. And the Medical Device Directive says that if you want to market a device, you need to ensure it's CE certified. But within the Medical Device Directive, there's also an exemption. If the competent authority authorizes you, you can place a medical device onto the market without official CE approval when it is in the interest of the protection of health. And in order to do so, the competent authority, which is the Ministry of Health and Welfare and Sport in the Netherlands, needs to assess the safety of such a device before authorizing its use. In our case, the route to approval by the competent authority went as follows. There was a shortened technical file review by the notified body. We did technical usability testing in 3 different hospitals with actual users, and we also did clinical testing in 3 different hospitals with different users. The data generated by these 3 points was then analyzed by an expert panel of the ministry who gave their expert opinion. And the ministry then, in consultation with the Inspectorate of Health and Youth Care in the Netherlands, approved our device onto the Dutch market. During this process, the main focus was on the safety and the performance of the Demcon. One of the advantages we had that we already had at the heart of the system the Macari respiratory module in place, and that the safety and performance of that module, which provided the main functionality, was already proven. So during the development of the Demcon, we mainly had to focus on the safety and performance aspects of the system as a whole. The information regarding the safety and performance we used to demonstrate that we met the essential requirements of the Medical Device Directive, which we did by first analyzing which requirements were applicable for our device, and then assessing which standards we needed to use to prove compliance. And we proved compliance with these standards by in-house testing and design. Usually you would go to a test house to test against these standards, but due to the limited time frame, there wasn't time for that. So on top of the testing information provided, we did a risk-benefit analysis to determine whether the results of our testing were acceptable or not. And this assessment was again reviewed and approved by the notified body and the ministry before they approved the CE exemption. As said, after the CE exemption, we also continued with the CE certification. For this, the company of the notified body performed an on-site audit at us, and the notified body performed a full file review of our technical file. One of the advantages we had that our quality management system was already certified against ISO 13485, and that one of the other companies within the holding was already certified against the Medical Device Directive. And since we have one quality management system for all the companies within the holding, our audit scope could be limited. On the other hand, we did have to involve a test house to test against the standards, which is always quite a time-consuming process. So to be able to meet the strict timelines we had to have a close involvement of the different parties. Right from the start of the development, we had the discussions with the inspectorate, the ministry, and the notified body to align expectations and approach towards the CE exemption, so that we determined beforehand what would be expected from us, and so that we could work really focused toward that. During the development, we also had early and close contact with the 3 different hospitals, so that we could quickly start with the clinical and usability studies when needed. And after we had decided that we wanted to continue with the CE certification as well, we immediately involved the test house. So that also with them we could arrange what to expect and when, and so that we had very short lines in case of issues during testing, so that we could quickly resolve them and get the testing done in as short time as possible. One example of this close cooperation was that we demonstrated the biocompatibility of the ventilator via paper assessment instead of testing because of the limited time frame. This became quite an extensive and complex analysis, and we had quite a few discussions with the notified body because we're not on the same page and we're speaking a different language. In the end, we resolved this by having a face-to-face meeting with them, which resulted in a mutual agreement regarding the approach and subsequently the acceptance of the assessment by the notified body. To conclude, we were able to realize CE exemption as well as CE certification in a very short time frame for our medical ventilator. This was partly the results of the fact that we already had proven technology, which was the heart of our system, which limited the information we had to gather regarding the device. It was also helped by the fact that we already had a quality management system in place. And also the short timelines between the short lines between the different parties and the clear agreements we made beforehand regarding the deliverables ensure that we could have a quick CE exemption and certification realized. On top of that, also the pandemic helped. Everybody had one common goal, which was to get the ventilator onto the market as soon as possible, which resulted in a very high focus of all parties, no motivational issues, and everybody was extremely willing to help and to think along how to realize this as quickly as possible. As said, we could not have done this alone. But we were supported by many other parties, which are shown on this slide. And I would like to take the opportunity to thank them all for their close cooperation during this exciting times. And with that, I would also like to thank you for your interest, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Iris. I don't see any questions here in the comments flow yet, but as I have mentioned, you will have the opportunity to contact our presenters both during the conference, now in the lunch break, and of course afterwards. So I would like to thank Iris again. I think it was a real success story what you have just outlined. So I hope it also gives some positive example for the participants. So thank you very much again. And basically, we are done with our first session for today. But before you leave, I would just like to take the floor myself and let me tell you some words about our upcoming plans and programs. So you can see that when we finished, it says that call for cooperation. So those of you who has participated on yesterday's plenary session, I'm sure you have heard about our main breakthrough deliverable, which is the digital technopole. My colleague Sebastian from the Co-Versatile project was giving a very good introduction about the digital technopole. So I would like to tell you some words about it also. The digital technopole, you can see the screenshot and the link on the screen, is one of the outcomes of our project, Co-Versatile. So the digital technopole is an electronic marketplace where you can find all the results of the Co-Versatile project. Here, after registration, you can find some software solutions, some training courses, consulting projects. After registration, if you go to the marketplace, there will be a menu which lists the apps, the courses, the consultings, the techniques, and the sectors where our project is active. And there you will also find all the partners of the project. And why are we advertising the digital technopole? Because one of the most important tasks of the Co-Versatile project is not just to show you what we have achieved, but we would like to include you in this procedure. So the matchmaking between you, the SMEs or individuals or the representatives of bigger companies are also one of the most important participants in our project, because the aim of the project was just to share with you all the results and all of these wonderful researches and preparations which we have just started to introduce about the certification of the masks and other products. So matchmaking is one of the outcomes of the project. So after you register at the digital technopole, we will get in touch with you and we will offer a one-on-one consultation just to find some tailored support for your company's requirements. After this assessment, we will prepare a user journey which includes the development of a customized strategy and an action plan for you. And after the analysis, we will suggest that which are those specific solutions and providers of the Co-Versatile project and of the digital technopole which fit more your individual needs. So basically it means that you will get in touch with one of the consortium partners who are called partners or providers, and then you can just go on with your individual discussion on future cooperations. And when I'm saying we, is the Co-Versatile project, and within the Co-Versatile project, the company where I work, Innomine, is a consultancy company, is in charge of this task. So you will also have the opportunity to connect me directly after or during the conference. You can find my and our connection details in Hopin, and also you will get some further information about it after the conference. But during the conference, when we finish here right now, we have dedicated some time for visiting the Digital Technopole and visiting the expo. So between the breaks, you can see that from 11:15, so basically from right now until 11:45, you can visit the Digital Technopole. First you have to register, and then you can just browse and find those important features and those interesting parts which you are interested in. And after discovering the Digital Technopole, we have the expo open from 11:45 to 12:45. The expo is open all day. You can find it in Hopin on the left-hand side of your screen. But between in this time slot, so after 11:45, we will also join the expo. When I'm saying we, are the partners in the Co-Versatile project. So every Co-Versatile project partner has a so-called booth where somebody will be staying during this 1 hour, waiting for your contact, where you can chat with us live and either talk to us today, or you can also schedule a time slot later on when it's more convenient for you. So that is for today. So lunch break, Digital Technopole Expo, and at 1 o'clock we go on with our conference with the section on change management in manufacturing, which will take approximately 2 hours from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and you will also have the opportunity to visit the expo after the second session. So I would like to thank you for your participation today, but please stay with us, have a short break, and during your break you can just visit the Digital Technopole and Expo, and let's see each other at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And before you leave, we can just watch a short video about the Co-Versatile project. So thank you very much again, and see you in approximately 2 hours. Bye.